This video is suitable for anyone who wishes to understand how to read notes on the alto and tenor clefs, and those wishing to clarify the layout of key signatures in the alto and tenor clefs. As you're watching this video, it's likely that you're already familiar with both the treble and bass clefs. You possibly already know that there are lots of other clefs in use today, but the two most common other clefs are the alto clef, which looks like this, and can be found primarily in music written for the viola. It's still used by, amongst others, the alto trombone, but it is the viola which uses it extensively. The tenor clef uses exactly the same symbol as the alto clef, but it sits a little higher on the stave. It can be found most commonly in music written for the bassoon, cello, and very occasionally the double bass and euphonium. Your first task is to make sure that you can remember the clef names with their corresponding clef. If you're studying for a music exam, it might also be useful to remember which instruments use which clef. Here's the alto clef. It sits neatly within the confines of the top and bottom lines of the stave. This is the tenor clef. Although it looks the same, it pokes out to the top of the stave and sits with a spare space at the bottom of the stave. Once you've remembered which clef is which, it's relatively easy to work out the notes. Where the two curls of each clef meet in the middle, here's the top curl in purple, and here's the bottom curl in blue, they always meet at a line on the stave. Now, this line where they meet, highlighted here in red, is middle C. Therefore, these notes, as they sit directly on the line, are exactly the same pitch as middle C in the treble clef and middle C in the bass clef. Although these notes look like four very different notes, they are the same. If I sat at a piano and we were to play them, I would just hit one key, the same key for each of these notes. I do go into quite some detail about middle C in my video entitled Transposition Part 1. Have a look at that video from about 2 minutes 40 seconds if you're not entirely familiar with the concept of middle C. So we now know that all of these notes are middle C. The note higher in all clefs is D. Here is the D in treble and bass clefs, highlighted red. Here is the D in the alto clef, and then the D in tenor clef. The next note up would be an E in all clefs, and so on. The way we read notes between clefs remains the same. We just have to know which clef we are using to be able to interpret which note is being described. Accidentals, that's sharps, flats and naturals, work in exactly the same way in alto and tenor clef. If I placed a sharp before each of the middle Cs, then they each become C sharp. It can take some time to get used to reading notes on the alto and tenor clefs, particularly when most musicians are used to just the treble and bass clefs. However, just remember that link to the middle C, always refer back to where the two curls meet, and know that that is middle C. So let's work out this note on the alto clef. Just find middle C. Remember, it's where the two curls of the alto clef meet, so it's this line. So a note on this line would be a C, in the space below a B, on the line beneath that an A, the next space a G, and on the last line an F. We therefore know that this note is an F. Always remember to start off by finding that middle C and working out the notes from there. The appearance order of sharps and flats in key signatures never changes. If you've watched my videos on the circle of fifths, you may remember this silly phrase we used to help us remember the order. Father Christmas gave Dad an electric blanket. There are loads of other helpful phrases, so if you've got one that you prefer, feel free to use that one, it's not a problem. We take the first letter from each word, and it gives us the order of the sharps. So in a key signature, which has one sharp in it, G major or E minor, it will always be the F, which is the first sharp in the key signature, as this is the first letter of the first word from this silly phrase. Here it is on all the staves. Note that in the tenor clef, the sharp is placed at the bottom of the stave rather than the top, like all the other staves. It'll become clear why this is shortly. Let's keep going through a few more key signatures. 2 sharps, F and C on the stave, 3 sharps, 4 sharps, and let's just stop here for one moment. Firstly, if you're not sure how to work out keys, then you need to look at my Circle of Fifths videos. They explain how to do this. If you're happy with keys, then you need to notice that in the tenor clef, the sharps are laid out somewhat differently. In the treble, bass and alto clefs, the key signature starts at the top F of the stave, and then goes down to the C, up to G, and down to D. Whereas in the tenor clef, it starts at the bottom F, then up, then down, then up. To explain the problem with tenor clef, I'm just going to remove the correct key signature for the moment. Let's suppose we did start on the top F of the stave. The key signature would start here. Then let's add the next sharp, which would be down to a C. No problem so far. The problem occurs when we hit the third sharp. Following the pattern of the key signatures from the other clefs, it needs to go up from the C sharp we've just placed up to a G. The G in tenor clef up from the C would have a ledger line, so our key signature would also need to include a ledger line. As we try to avoid ledger lines as much as possible, it's accepted that the tenor clef key signature is written in a slightly different manner. Do make sure you don't fall into this trap when writing a key signature in tenor clef. Let's jump ahead to 7 sharps. That's the maximum number of sharps you can have in a key signature, just so that you can see the layout of all of the sharps in all 4 clefs. The tenor clef has this very nice pattern of, as we already know, starting at the bottom F and just following a pattern of up, down, up, and so on. All the other keys have a pattern of starting on the top F and then down, up, down, down, up, down. You'll get used to these patterns with practice, but just remember, sharps must always be in the order listed here. Sharps must never use ledger lines, and that the tenor clef has that slightly different layout to avoid that ledger line. The order of flats uses our silly phrase again, but in reverse order. Again, if you've watched my video on the circle of fifths, you may remember that the phrase to help us with flats is blanket exploded and dad got charred feet. Again, if you've got your own version, that's absolutely fine. The first letter of the first word tells us that a key signature with 1 flat is a B. Let's have a look at that on all the staves. You'll be pleased to know that with flats, the layout is the same for all of the clefs, including that tenor clef. We just follow the pattern of the silly phrase. So the next flat will be an E from the first letter of the second word, and it is up from the B. The next flat, an A, is down. The next flat is up, and we keep going down, up, until we get to the maximum number of flats in a key signature, 7. As you can see, all of the clefs follow this very nice pattern of up, down, and this is for all of the clefs, including that tenor clef. Before we end, let's just recap on how to identify a note in the tenor or alto clefs. Here's a note, and there's a key signature. So number 1, locate where the 2 curls of the clef meet. Here's the top curl, here's the bottom curl. Number 2, the line where the 2 curls meet is middle C. Number 3, you're going to use this middle C as a guide to all of the other notes. So here's a note on middle C. 1 note up would be a D, another up is to an E, here's F, here's G, here's an A. Now before we say, yep, this is an A, just make sure that the key signature or that any accidentals in the bar doesn't affect this note. It doesn't, key signature's got an F and a C, so we can say that this note on both the alto and tenor clef is an A. Good luck with the alto and tenor clefs. I do hope this video has been useful to you. Thanks for watching.